Some transfers change teams, but a few transfers, they change football forever. A teenager stolen from France. 2 South American stars smuggled into West Ham, a mid-table player who took FIFA to court and won, and a record-breaking deal that still makes people ask if football is broken. Oh, and one transfer that might have involved the Mafia. Stick around, because these are the transfers FIFA wished you'd forget. And it all starts not with a superstar, but with a skinny teenager in France whose move to Manchester United caused a scandal way bigger than his career at the time. Paul Pogba's move from Le Havre to Manchester United. Before Pogba was out there dyeing his hair every colour of the rainbow and dancing on Instagram, he was a scrawny teenager in France playing for Le Havre. And honestly, that club was not happy when Manchester United came sniffing around. They accused United of basically stealing Pogba, saying the club offered his family money, a house, and probably a free supply of Nando's if it came to that. Okay, I was joking about the Nando's part, but it got so messy that FIFA had to step in and investigate. In the end, United was cleared, but the whole thing sparked a big debate about how clubs were poaching young players before they were even fully developed. Pogba's move was one of the big reasons FIFA eventually tightened the rules on youth transfers. Now, Le Havre might feel justified in being angry. Sure, Pogba went on to win a World Cup and earn a blockbuster return to Old Trafford for £89 million, but he also spent much of his career blowing hot and cold. For every brilliant performance, there were long spells where he looked uninterested or injured. That original move didn't just show how far clubs would go for young talent, it also showed that hype doesn't always guarantee consistency. And if Pogba's transfer forced FIFA to rethink how teenagers were being poached, the next scandal showed what happens when a giant club ignored those rules completely. Barcelona's youth transfer ban, 2014. Barcelona's whole identity has always been built on La Masia, their legendary academy. We're talking about the factory that gave us Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, and even Gerard Piqué if you count his comeback. But in 2014, FIFA came knocking on their door with receipts. Turns out, Barca had been breaking the rules when recruiting underage players from abroad, and FIFA decided enough was enough. The punishment was a full 1-year ban on registering new players, and for a club that lived off splashing cash while mixing in academy gems, it was like chopping off their oxygen supply. They couldn't bring in anyone, and suddenly they had to survive with what they already had. The scandal was a reality check, and it showed that even Barcelona, with all its prestige and influence, wasn't untouchable. Fans tried to play it off like, yeah, but we'll just rely on La Masia more, but the truth was, the golden generation had already peaked, and Barcelona weren't the only ones. Just a few years later, Chelsea got hit with the exact same punishment, but their story took a very different twist. Chelsea transfer ban in 2019. Now this one was wild because it showed that even Chelsea, with all their Russian billionaire money at the time, couldn't escape FIFA's wrath. In 2019, Chelsea got hit with a 2-window transfer ban for illegally signing underage players. You know it's bad when FIFA actually punishes one of the richest and most powerful clubs in Europe instead of just slapping them with a fine they can pay off in one afternoon. The thing that made it even funnier is that Chelsea fans were panicking about the ban, but it ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to them. Because when you can't spend on flashy transfers, you actually have to use your academy players. And suddenly the world got Mason Mount, Reece James, Tammy Abraham, and a whole crop of ballers that might never have gotten their chance otherwise. The irony of a punishment turning into a blessing is something only Chelsea could pull off. Of course, once the ban was over, they went straight back to their shopping addiction. But for that short spell, Chelsea actually looked like a proper academy-driven club. And speaking of dodgy dealings with players, Carlos Tevez and Javier Mascherano to West Ham, 2006. This one right here feels like the plot of a Netflix show. Imagine you're watching Match of the Day in 2006, and out of nowhere, Carlos Tevez and Javier Mascherano, 2 of the hottest prospects in South America, are standing in West Ham shirts. West Ham. Not Manchester United, not Real Madrid, not even Arsenal. It would be like waking up to see Haaland signing for Nottingham Forest. Yeah, that bad. Turns out the whole thing was cooked up by a shady third-party company called MSI, who basically owned their contracts. This wasn't West Ham pulling off a masterclass in recruitment. It was more like a football black market deal. FIFA, the Premier League, and basically everyone was scrambling to figure out what was going on. And in the end, West Ham got slapped with a £5.5 million fine. But here's the kicker. Sheffield United ended up relegated that season, and they blamed it all on Tevez keeping West Ham up. They even dragged it through the courts for years. That scandal was so messy that FIFA banned third-party ownership globally, and Tevez's West Ham adventure became infamous. And to think, all of this chaos just so West Ham fans could chant Carlito for one season. Hey, if you've been enjoying this video so far, I think you should subscribe and like it so that you can see more videos like this. If Tevez's move felt like football's black market, the next story is the complete opposite. A player who decided he wasn't just going to accept the system, he was going to change the laws of the game itself. The Bosman case. This one isn't just a transfer, it's literally the reason the transfer market even looks the way it does today. Jean-Marc Bosman was a pretty average Belgian midfielder. I mean, he wasn't exactly Zidane or Luka Modric, but his name ended up changing football forever. In 1990, his contract with Liège expired, and he wanted to join a French club. Simple, right? Contract's done, he walks away. Except nope, it wasn't. His club blocked the move because, back then, teams could still demand a transfer fee even after a contract had expired. But Bosman wasn't having it. Instead of just accepting his fate like most players back then, he took FIFA and UEFA to court. Imagine the audacity of being a mid-table player and going after the two biggest institutions in football. But it worked. After 5 long years, in 1995, he won. The ruling said players could leave for free once their contracts were up. And just like that, the entire transfer system got flipped on its head. Clubs hated it, players loved it, and agents suddenly became kings of the market. Without Bosman, we don't get free transfers like Lewandowski to Madrid, Messi to PSG, or Mbappe flirting with Real Madrid. It all traces back to this one guy who decided he wasn't going to let a bunch of suits control his career. The Bosman ruling reshaped how players moved on free transfers. But before all of that, there was one deal that redefined how far clubs would go to spend money, and it involved a young Diego Maradona. Diego Maradona's move from Boca Juniors to Barcelona in 1982. Before he was the king in Napoli, Maradona had to pass through Barcelona, and this transfer in 1982 was so chaotic that it nearly didn't happen. Barcelona had just watched him light up the World Cup with Argentina, and they wanted him badly. But Boca Juniors weren't about to let their golden boy leave without a fight. What followed was months of political interference, financial disputes, and basically every dirty trick in the book. The fee, which was around £5 million, was a world record at the time, and the number of people trying to get a slice of it was ridiculous. Agents, businessmen, and even government officials were all involved. FIFA had to step in multiple times just to stop the whole thing from collapsing into lawsuits. At one point, it looked like the deal would be blocked entirely. In the end, Barcelona got their man, but the warning signs of what was to come were already there. The transfer set the tone for his career, which was genius football wrapped in controversy and chaos. It wasn't just about a player moving clubs, it was about football's growing obsession with money and power. And the fact that FIFA almost stopped it shows just how messy it was. Looking back, you can argue this was the birth of the modern super transfer. If Barcelona was messy, Napoli was downright explosive. Because when Maradona arrived in Naples in 1984, it wasn't just about football anymore. It was about power, money, and whispers of the Mafia. Diego Maradona's move from Barcelona to Napoli in 1984. Transfers don't get more legendary than this one because Maradona was already a superstar at Barcelona, but his time there was messy, full of injuries, fights, and drama. So when Napoli came calling in 1984, it wasn't just any transfer. Napoli weren't even close to being a powerhouse at the time. They were more like a mid-table club dreaming of relevance, and yet somehow they pulled off what was then the most expensive transfer in football history. But here's where it gets spicy. There were rumours, serious ones, that mafia money was involved in funding the deal. The Camorra, Naples' version of the Mafia, supposedly had its fingerprints all over it. FIFA didn't like the sound of that, but they couldn't prove anything, and Maradona became Napoli's player. That move didn't just change his career, it changed Italian football forever. Napoli went from being nobodies to winning league titles and becoming a European force, all because of Maradona's magic. Maradona's move to Napoli showed how power and politics could shape a transfer, but decades later, one deal would go even further. A transfer so expensive it didn't just break records, it broke football itself. Neymar from Barcelona to PSG in 2017. In 2017, PSG casually dropped €222 million to activate Neymar's release clause at Barcelona. €222 million. To put that in perspective, that's like buying 2 Harry Kanes and still having enough left over for a decent midfielder. Everyone thought release clauses were just legal decoration, like a fire alarm no one expects to ever actually go off. But PSG, who were powered by Qatari money, smashed it like it was nothing. FIFA and UEFA scrambled. Financial fair play suddenly became the hottest topic in football, and every journalist on earth was asking the same thing. Did this deal just break football? The answer was basically yes. Transfer fees skyrocketed after Neymar. Coutinho, Dembele, João Felix, everyone suddenly cost insane money because Barca had been robbed blind, and the market inflated instantly. Neymar's move was so controversial that it sparked years of investigations and debates about state-owned clubs and made fans question if traditional football powers could even keep up. And yet, here we are years later, still talking about it like it happened yesterday. In the end, you figure out that football transfers aren't just about who's signing where, they're a window into power, money, and chaos. From teenage prodigies getting poached, to clubs facing bans, to Maradona's deals with whispers of the Mafia, these stories show how wild the game can be behind the scenes. So next time you see a shocking transfer headline, remember, every fee, every clause, and every sudden move has a story that could rewrite football history. If you love this deep dive into football's craziest transfers, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because there's always a new scandal waiting just around the corner.